Tape Deck Media.
Good morning, Ruddaholics and Ruddlemaniacs. It is me, Taylor Ruddle, the hungriest tum in all the land, and we are back for another episode of Ruddle Me This. In this episode, I am joined by Pia from Plains FM. If you've been listening to the show in the last few weeks, you will probably recognise either Pia's name or Plains FM. They are a community access radio station here in Christchurch. And I've been collaborating with them in various ways. I've done an audiobook for them, Treasure Island. You can listen to that by Googling Plains FM Spin Me a Tale, or by tuning in every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. to hear a new couple of chapters from that. And in short, generally just because Plains FM and especially Pia have been so welcoming to me, I am essentially just some random chancer that turned up on their doorstep one day and asked if I could do something with them, and they were like, yeah, sure, why not? So I wanted to give back, and Pia is just delightful to talk to, so I thought we'd do an episode of 10 Tiny Joys, and I would let Pia talk a little bit about what the goal and the mission statement of Plains FM are up the top. And we had a fantastic conversation. It's a long one, but I know you're going to enjoy it. There's a lot of history on podcasts in there. Pia is very well versed in podcast lore. Just quickly before we start, I am going to be at the Dunedin Fringe Festival on the 20th to the 23rd, which is this coming week. I'm performing my new show, Panic at the Buffet, at Inch Bar at 7 o'clock. All of those dates. You can get your tickets at dunedinfringe.nz. I would love to see you there. I think it's going to be an absolutely delightful hour of laughs. All right, I have rambled for far too long. Let's get on with the show. Please welcome to the show, Pia from Plains FM, everybody. Good afternoon, Pia. Welcome to, it's weird, I'm in your studio, but we are doing my show, so welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, it's, I've been wanting to, I feel like we had good sort of banter in between when I was coming in and recording stuff, so I thought it would make quite a good, you'd make a good guest for the podcast, and here we are, so.
Thank you, and I've been meaning to get to one of your quiz nights
yes,
with the team, because we went to one at the Socialist Society last year, and it was obviously all about socialism, and we knew nothing, so we were so disheartened. But Wednesdays are really hard for us to do because lots of us have stuff on, but I know we're going to get to one.
Well, I think I'm hoping to have one up either on a Friday or... I imagine by the time this podcast comes out, I'm at the Palms Mall every Tuesday hosting a quiz there. So
well, Tuesdays are good for me. So let's get the Plains FM team to the Palms.
I hope I haven't just blown up my own spot, and I'm hoping it's happened by now. But it's looking very positive. I'll say that so far.
We put a marker in, and you can edit this out.
Yes, exactly. So some people that have been listening to the podcast will know that I've been doing a little bit of voiceover type stuff with Plains FM, but I thought it'd be great if you could just talk a little bit about what Plains FM is, because people might not be so familiar with the world of community access radio. So could you tell the listeners just a little bit about what Plains do?
Absolutely. So like you said, we're a community access radio station, and we're one of 12 stations in New Zealand, and they're all over the country. And what we are is a place for people who are not necessarily represented in mainstream media to kind of have a voice and a place to create content. And it's really specifically by, for, and about their community. So the media that is made, it's not always like the most professional, but the unique thing about it is it's people telling their own stories about themselves in their own way and in their own language. So we broadcast in over 20 languages at the moment. And that's the really important part when you think about how that type of media is different, say, from someone outside of that community coming and telling that community's story for an audience who might also not be part of that community. So that those are very different ways of communicating.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we actually on the 29th of February, which is a leap year this year, it's our 36th birthday.
Wow.
Or 7th birthday, depending on how you count things.
What's the discrepancy of 29 years? What is that from?
Yeah, leap year.
Oh, I see. Because
So-
it was founded on a leap year, was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So-
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, depending how you look at it, we're either 7 or 36.
That must be difficult to make the birthday card like 7/36. They
Yeah.
don't really sell those
No.
in the stores.
And Nikki, the station manager, every year is like, why would anyone start something on the 29th? Couldn't they have waited a day?
Yeah. It's funny when you run events and like create businesses. Like I had to cancel the quiz this year because it just happened that Wednesday was a Valentine's Day, and you always think to yourself, why didn't I see this coming but it's like, how do you predict
Yep.
when a Wednesday is going to be a year into the future? You just can't do it, right?
Yeah.
And so what is your role here? You're kind of like the program director, or, have I got that right?
My official title is Content and Community Creator Coordinator.
Nice.
So I help decide what gets played on air, and if people want to have a show, they come to the station and I give them training. I help them craft their show, structure it. I teach them how to record and edit their own show, and kind of guide them and help them until they're feeling confident. And then we are very hands-off. We don't do any sort of, what do you call it when you, we don't tell people what they can say or tell them what they can talk about.
Yeah.
So the relationship between Plains FM and our content creators is we provide the support, the service, the facilities, the broadcast capability. So like this is a pretty cool thing, like a podcast, like you can create this at home, but it's pretty unique to be able to actually broadcast.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's sort of our thing that we help people do. And you can go to live to air at the station, so I can do live radio training.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about, because I'm assuming my podcast is still on the airs. As far as I know, I
Yes.
haven't been taken off.
Yes, Ruddle Me This.
That has been a really surprising air of legitimacy when I tell people like the podcast is SADS award nominated. It's still award nominated. And then I say, and you can listen to it on Plains FM, and they always go, okay. And so it's a great legitimizer for me.
Well, it's a great legitimizer for everyone. It really is surprising to me who will say yes to interviews based on a show being on Plains FM. So that's one of the things that we offer people, like as part of our service, is we're giving our name and branding to that content creator or that community. We also, all of our podcasts carry a New Zealand On Air tag at the beginning because we're funded by New Zealand On Air partially. Therefore, their podcast or radio show is also funded partially by New Zealand On Air.
Wow.
So that is actually pretty important and unique for some people.
It is.
Some shows we have are about quite controversial topics, and they require a little bit of oversight from us. So we have a show which has been like truly incredible to be part of over the last year. And it's not something that I started, or I don't work very much on it. The previous content coordinator and Nikki, the station manager, work on this show, but it's called Cult Chat. Oh. And it is 3 women who, 2 of them are cult survivors, one from Centrepoint, one from Exclusive Brethren, and a third woman who helps the Levers of Gloria Vale. So she started the Gloria Vale Levers Trust in Timaru, and they do an incredible job of educating, giving voice to people who are leaving cults. So that has the requirements there is, we have extra help for people around like defamation. We have to be careful how they talk about certain stuff to avoid rules around the broadcasting standards. Yeah. So that's something that we also help people with. Yeah. So that's been a really humbling project to watch, and it's had a really great reception. And it's actually up for hopefully for a New Zealand Radio Award for the access radio sector. And a couple of other shows are potentially going to be in that. I can't say definitely yet because the applications, we haven't officially done anything. But 2 other shows that are looking at putting in applications, which are so exciting, is one that I helped start. And it's called Duct Tape and Flip-Flops. And it's 2 young men. One is still at high school. The other one is following his passions here on the ACOTAR campus next door at the broadcasting school. We're not associated with the broadcasting school, but we're in the same building. And they interview founders and entrepreneurs doing like new types of business, often with an environmental impact in New Zealand.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And they get like really amazing guests. Like they had the mayor in here, and they do such a professional job. I really can't say enough good things about them. They've been a joy to work with. So that's another one, Duct Tape and Flip Flops. Check it out if you're interested in entrepreneurship and like creating and improving the world. And then another one is Becoming Tangata Tiriti, which was done in partnership with Leadership Lab. And that's about what the treaty actually means, the history of the treaty, and how as a Pakeha or migrant or other type of, I don't know how you identify, that you don't have to be Māori or you can be Māori, how you become a person who respects, represents, and fosters the treaty in New Zealand. And that was such an exciting mini-series to work on, and it had great pickup. A lot of other stations around New Zealand, the community access stations picked that up, and I feel like that is something that is really... people are really interested in hearing that type of content. And Gwen and Fiona Dehan, who were the presenters on that show, did a really great job.
Oh, cool. Those that's very relevant at the moment as well. People are starting to talk about it with the government talking about reevaluating it. Or I'm not sure what their plan is there, but
yeah, it's a great time to learn about it as well, because I think we hear politicians say things, and if we don't know the history and actually the impact of those decisions, we don't really know what we're voting for, what the real plan is. And the thing with Fiona and Gwen is they're two Pakeha women. And the other interesting thing is Fiona Dehan, who really spearheaded the project, is an Irish migrant. And she thought it was really important. When she learned about it, she was like, this has changed my life, and I want it to change other people's lives. So she was the one, as a migrant to New Zealand, who thought this is really important for other people to know. So we do a lot of stuff at Plains FM with migrant communities, and individuals in the community who are passionate about fostering change, fostering community. One of the things, I had a comment recently, a listener, they actually called and they were like, everything's so positive. It's just like positive stuff on Plains FM, and it's such a balm in the news cycle and the world events. Like, I love listening to Plains FM because it's positive. Yeah. And I know it's like we can't tell people exactly how many listeners are tuned in at any one time, because you can't measure that in an FM frequency. And commercial stations spend tens of thousands of dollars doing surveys where they physically hand out paper surveys or apps, and people record what they're listening to when, and then they extrapolate out from that information who's listening and what the audience is for everything. And that's how they charge for advertising. Plains FM, we don't have that money to do that survey. So a hard thing for us is we can never say who's listening, but we know people are. And I've had some amazing calls. Like, I was working late one night. Our most popular show is Alcoholics Anonymous Radio. It's actually got quite a few listeners in the US as well. Wow. And someone called me in tears and was like, I really needed to hear this today. Like, I want to start my sobriety journey. Wow. And this has been the best thing. Like, thank you so much. And like, I was like, even now, like I'd like tear up at hearing that, because it was like, hearing like in 2024, someone to actually make a phone call. Yeah. Like, you think about what that took that person. That doesn't happen very much. It doesn't, does it? I know we're doing like this like really cool special stuff, and it isn't always about the listeners either. I think it's been very powerful for some people to share their story, and to have a voice and know that there's someone there to help them. That's what we do at the station. Like, that's the difference between doing something with us, say, and just doing something yourself at home in your bedroom. Is like there's a person here. There's lots of people. Well, there's 5 people here, trying to keep the radio station broadcasting 24 hours a day, here to help. But yeah, it's been a great experience working here, and I've made a lot of really cool friends, both with the station staff and like with broadcasters. I got to meet you, and it's been fun to work with you on Spin Me a Tale, which I think you'll either have already broadcast the first episode or that's coming up.
I think it will have gone live by this point. Cool. But yeah, even me, just as sort of, I was essentially just a random chancer that asked you if I can do some voiceover, and
yeah, you brought me in and showed me how everything works, and then said, "Do you want to do an audiobook?" And you wouldn't get that kind of you wouldn't even get through the front door at any other place walking up and just asking, "Can I have a go?" It is a really, like you say, really positive place. And even though you're working in an office, like every time I come in, everybody seems pretty upbeat and stuff. So it's not a lot of workplaces, like corporate workplaces, can say that. So I think you're right on the money there. Should we get into some of your tiny joys?
Sure.
So that's, I think I probably would have said this in the introduction, but we're doing 10 tiny joys today. So I guess the first one segues quite nicely from what we're just talking about is your first joy is podcasts. And you've actually given nice context to a lot of the items on your list, but I'll let you kind of talk about them. So me too, I like podcasts a lot. What are some of the ones you're listening to at the moment?
Well, we sort of had a bit of a chat before we made it into the studio, and I was sort of saying, like, I have certain ones that I know when they drop, like I kind of time my week by them. There's certain things I like to listen to at certain times of the day. Like there's some that I like to listen to like when I'm falling asleep. There's some that I like to listen to on my drive to work or my drive home. It's Friday. I always listen to No Such Thing as a Fish on my drive home. That I like is genuinely something I look forward to.
Awesome.
I think that, I ended up in radio because I loved podcasts, basically. I came back from overseas and I was working at the university as a project manager, and I was like really not enjoying it. And I basically, as a whim, went to broadcasting school in Auckland. I worked as an intern at More FM and The Breeze in in Auckland, and then got a job in Nelson. And then a couple months into that, COVID hit. And so I came back to Christchurch and I got this job at Plains FM. So that's sort of how I've ended up here. But really my way in, I actually I have always loved radio. My parents were big RNZ listeners, and I loved, this is going to age me, Channel Z. I was obsessed with Channel Z. I had all of the CDs. This is like really kind of niche stuff, but like I love Bomber. I love the morning show. I love the weird competitions. Like I still think about them now, like Word in a Bucket, where they would just like yell a word in a bucket. And then they had a competition like who's going to die, like what old person's going to die. And every year someone said like the Pope, and then finally the Pope died.
1 year it did happen.
And like, this is, and actually there was a caller there who always used to call up, like in radio, you call this person a prize pig. So it's someone who calls or like has the number on speed dial and they win everything. And there was a prize pig on Channel Z who used to call up every morning and he'd go, "Oh, hello." And he'd do the voice like this. I ended up dating him.
Really?
Yes.
So that was the rapport built from...
Did not know it was him until a couple of dates in, but he used to win lots of tickets. We went to lots of gigs based on...
I bet those are some good dates then.
Yeah, I was like, there wasn't me at like 17 in high school. So always loved radio, and then podcasts came along and it was like even more even more great content, and it really different sort of stuff. So like probably the first podcast I ever got really obsessed with was This American Life. I feel like
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, like 2004, that was like the biggest podcast in the world. Wow. 2004, yeah. So, and I don't know, I can even give you the history. Like, this is what I do all day. I can tell you the history of podcast. I can tell you the first one that went out, like what it all means. But This American Life, the spinoff from that was that really blew up podcasting worldwide was Serial. Was obsessed with Serial. And then what other ones do I love? Roman Mars, 99% Invisible. I remember the first episode of that. I've listened to every single one, and I realized there's like several hundred now. I've listened to every This American Life episode. Yeah. So, yeah, I got really into it.
How long has This American Life been going for?
Since 1995, I want to say. I couldn't tell you the actual date. I think there's 7 or pushing 800 episodes soon.
Wow. It was that old.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, so it started as a radio show.
Yeah.
And then it was podcasted when that first came out. So like a podcast, the technical definition of a podcast is an audio file attached to an RSS feed, like a real simple syndication feed. So that was like blogging is what uses RSS feeds to like, you write something and then it spits it out in all the places you tell it to.
Oh, I didn't realize it was RSS. That makes sense.
Yeah. So an audio file is that's why it's called like a podcast. Like, so that's kind of off like the idea of blogging as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where does the etymology of podcast come from?
That I've seen a couple of different things. There's like a Guardian article that used the word podcast, but I was at a podcasting summit last year and they were like, no, there was someone else. So like, I think that's up for debate, but yeah. So I think it was like the year 2000 was the first podcast.
Wow. Yeah, because I was sort of cognizant around when podcasting was becoming a little more mainstream, and people always used to say like, "Oh, it's like radio on the internet," but it's
it does exist, but it's different. There is a
exactly, yeah. Well, that's really fascinating. We may have to do another episode with you if you want to talk more about the podcast, about the deep dive. Are there any other ones that you want to mention to the listeners?
New ones that I'll tell you the new one that I just love is like two of my favorite comedians and one who I wasn't that familiar with have one called Handsome Podcast, and that's Tig Notaro, Mae Martin, and Fortune Famester.
Oh,
and Tig Notaro is a bloody legend. That stand-up special with her where she took her shirt off, like that is just like legendary. The one at Largo, that's the one that that like I remember when that happened, and an interview with her on This American Life about it. I loved her TV show. One Mississippi. Have you seen that?
Yes.
And Mae Martin, total babe. Oh my God, she's the
only one that I don't recognize of the three. I know Fortune and Tig, but I've not heard of Mae.
Mae Martin, sort of a genderqueer. In fact, actually, maybe Mae is a they. I can't remember off the top of my head. Apologies if I have misgendered her.
That's fine. The listeners know you mean well.
But I first came across her just like some clips on the internet, and I really love also Taskmaster, and she was on the latest or the season before. So she wasn't someone I was like super like into, before that. Like she was like, oh, I like this comedian. Their dynamic is incredible. Like I have laughed out loud, like actual laughed out loud at that podcast driving to work, like 10 out of 10. I can't listen to it too late in the evening because it makes me too energized.
Yeah. I think there's something interesting about 3-mic podcasts where sometimes we could probably talk about podcast theory all day on this, but sometimes the sum is much greater than the parts with 3-mic podcasts. Like I've been listening to one about these 3 guys that moved to Japan, and they were all very high-ranking anime YouTubers, and so they formed this podcast together called Trash Taste, and that like skyrocketed them like much bigger than they were individually. And it's great when it all just sort of meshes, and
you get that magic lightning in a bottle. You never know when it's going to hit.
Exactly. I'm looking forward to hopefully one day doing a 3-mic podcast of my own. I just sort of need to
cobble together two more comics.
All right, so let's go. This again related to the first one, but audiobooks. This is your second tiny joy. Tell us a little bit about what you like about audiobooks.
Yeah, I am basically always listening to something. Also, when Taylor arrived to the station, I was having a stressful conversation with an electrician because I'm renovating my house. So I have like blasted through some like 30-hour audiobooks, sanding floors and scraping bits and tiling things over the summer. But yeah, I like radio. And I think also this is probably relevant. I'm quite dyslexic, and I didn't learn to read until I was a bit older, but have always loved audio, just like always. And like I used to love listening to audiobooks in the car with my family on like going on holiday and stuff like that. So I've always loved them, and I continue to love them. I actually love reading, and audiobooks have been a way for me to get back into reading this year, actually. Which has been quite nice. I do think sometimes I go in and out of liking fiction or nonfiction. I'm in a bit of a fiction phase. I've jumped on the ACOTAR bandwagon. If you know, you know.
I don't know. I'm afraid.
It's called A Court of Thorn and Roses. And
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're really in,
No, then yeah.
it's called ACOTAR.
Sorry, I'm just a poser.
Yeah. So I've listened to all of the ACOTAR books, and then I've started on Crescent City. I'm a bit too scared to go back to Throne of Glass because that's a lot of content. But yeah, everyone else, I love a cultural touchstone moment.
Yeah.
Like Eat, Pray, Love. When that came out, I was like such a snob, and I was like, meh, everyone likes it, so it must be crap. And then I read it, and I was like, this is incredible. Like, I love this. And then after that, I was like, nah, if everyone likes it, it's because it's awesome. And everyone loves ACOTAR, and I bloody love it too.
Is that related to...
Are you thinking of Fourth Wing?
I was going to say Shadow and Bone. That's separate, right? They're different because Shadow and Bone is young adult. Is ACOTAR, is that like...
It's called, to the technical term, and I actually have just learned this recently, is new adult. So it is basically young adult, but really horny.
Oh, okay. Well, that just sounds like young adult as far as I know. But
maybe, explicit.
Okay. So there's more smutty than okay.
Yeah,
right,
it's also known as fairy smut.
Oh, I've heard that term before. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah.
And is it being made into a TV show, or is it just huge off of the books? The fact, because cultural touchstone was a fantastic word there, and you've just articulated something that I've had no idea there was a name for it, but I'm going to continue using that word going forward.
Yeah, I believe, look, from my deep dive into the ACOTAR world, this is what I can tell you. The series has been picked up. It is in development, but it's not being progressed. So where that lands it, I don't really know. But like with the success of like Bridgerton, which I've also listened to the audiobooks of, I really hope that people with lots of money make it because it would be fun.
So I wonder if that will be the next like Game of Thrones. You remember that was the big thing that everyone was watching for a while.
There is another series called Fourth Wing, and that's become very big as well. And that is kind of adjacent to ACOTAR. And it seems like there's like been a big book talk or like the Instagram version of that. It has just really captured people's like imagination. And it just, and actually, if you want to move on to one of my other little joys, I've just been thrilled to kind of discover this corner of the internet. And
is this number 8?
It is number 8.
ACOTAR, shitposting, and book memes.
Yes.
So that's number 8, but we can connect these two together. So, tell us more about the shitposting.
Like, there are pages and pages of just middle-aged, horny housewives writing fan theories.
That's my audience right there. So
it is so good. I have lost hours down some of these rabbit holes. They're hilarious. And everyone knows this is like, everyone's like, I can't believe I'm writing it this year. Like, it's so funny, but it just seems to be this like judgment-free, joyous, silly place for people to be nerds. And that's, what is better than that? And, there's dorks who are doing stuff with like AI generated art. There are nerds making memes with like The Office, and, these characters from ACOTAR. It's just wonderful. Listen to the audiobooks or read the audiobooks and then jump on some of the ACOTAR shitposting pages.
That's normally if I really get into a series, that's kind of my next. Like I've gotten really into the Reacher series, but just sort of coincidentally as the TV show was coming out. But I'd sort of been reading them out of order and stuff. And it's funny how that's kind of like, it's like, okay, I like the series. Like I'll subscribe to the Reddit page of the, the serious discussion of whatever it is. And then you look for which one is the like memes and the shit posting one. And quite often those are more, weirdly more positive than the regular one. Like, I'm trying to think what I've been watching. Oh, the Lord of the Rings had the Rings of Power that came out. I had to leave the Reddit on because it was just people complaining about the show. But then
this is not that. Yeah. It is just people like loving it and like joy.
That was the shit posting one, was people just making memes about elves and stuff like that.
It's so good. And I've like, my sister was, she was the first person who I think her and her workmate were just like, life sucks. Like, let's do something hilarious. Like, let's start a weird book club for just like, this is everywhere. Like, let's read this together. And it's just been so much fun sending memes and stuff to each other. I mean, there's just nothing greater than, getting like a hilarious Michael Scott mashup video with some fairies.
When you have some friends that you can, it's almost like you have different shit posts that you can send different friends. Like I have a good friend that we send each other Lord of the Rings ones pretty much.
It's like how you communicate now.
It's how you stay in touch. You don't really say how you're going or anything like that. It's just you sending them back and forth like was that old game Pong on the NES or whatever it was?
Oh, I see your meme and I raise you one more.
Exactly. All right, so then number 3. This one I'm a little bit unfamiliar with just in general, but number 3 is Swedish pop music. And you've given some examples here. So we've got Robin, Love Low, sorry.
Tove Lo.
Yes, sorry, I read that completely wrong. And what else have we got? Zara Larsson, and your all-time favorite is Jens Lekman. So I've never heard of all of these artists here. What Swedish pop music, what kind of got you, how did you discover it? How did you kind of get into it?
Well, Robin is like incredible. You would know some of her songs.
Okay.
She's like worldwide super famous. But I lived in Sweden for a long time. Jens Lekman is also someone who I had heard his music before I had lived in Sweden. But there's lots of like Swedish pop and music production is a huge business in Sweden, and that's where Spotify is created and headquartered. Lots of music, lots of producers for like Rihanna and big pop names. Britney Spears come out of Sweden.
Wow.
So it's a big industry there. Their actual homegrown sort of music scene is super vibrant. And also I could add to that list like even some Norwegian stuff, like Sigrid is another person I really like that people have probably heard some of her music. But yeah, it's just like awesome music. Jens Lekman is more of a singer-songwriter than like a pop star, but it is definitely has a pop kick to it. And he's done some incredible songs about LGBTQ rights in Europe, which are sort of being curtailed under like Viktor Orbán and, reflecting on stuff over his career.
Yeah.
I saw him at a great venue called Pustervik, which is near where I used to live in Göteborg, in Gothenburg. And it was a real homegrown, like that was his like local big venue. And it was an incredible concert. I went with my best friend. We laughed, we cried. I have the LP. I just love him so much. I just can't get enough.
I'm going to have to look them up when I get home tonight. So does that mean you like the Eurovision contest?
If you don't like it, you're just being a snob and robbing yourself of just some silly fun. Like the music is great. The acts are mad. The culture around it is silly. Like get some friends together, download one of the like drinking games off the internet. And then it's like really fun, like looking up all these like weird, Eastern European countries. There have been some incredible acts, but yeah.
Yeah, I just did a podcast with, it would have released, I think by the time this is out, a podcast with a comic from called Dick from Auckland, and the topic he wanted to talk about was the Eurovision. So I got a whole history of the event and some of his favourite acts. And,
so good.
He referred to it as the Gay Olympics, which made me laugh quite a lot. That's
incredible.
A great title for it.
My favourite song of all time, I don't know if it has come up, I think it's Estonian or one of those sorts of countries, and it's just called like Let's Bake a Cake, and it's just these like strange pixie sort of people like smiling, kind of the smiles are just like a little bit too big and a little too much eye contact, and they're just like, I wanna make a cake with you. Like, it's just
I'll have to look
very
that up
stupid.
Too. Yeah. I saw one last night. It was guys dressed as like wolves, and it's called something like "Give the Wolf a Banana." And they're wearing like suits,
like yellow.
Yeah, the yellow wolf heads. Yeah. And then we talked about this on the podcast, but my favorite was Lordi. They did Hard Rock Hallelujah. They were dressed as like demons and like big bat wings and fires coming up out of the stage.
Some of them are so intense.
I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
I also like when they're just like a little bit inappropriately sexy. Like there was one Spanish one, and they were all like wearing like not much more than like G-strings. And then the next person is doing a power ballad in like German. It's just like such a crazy mix of stuff. But also like I think like when the Ukrainian group won last year before, that was so moving, and that song was incredible. Like I feel like that's kind of magic, right? And like Eurovision gave us ABBA, like for nothing else.
So that was the tie back to the. I wondered if what's your feelings on ABBA?
I mean, you'd have to be dead inside.
Yeah,
you'd have to be dead inside. I'll tell you what's a good time: the ABBA Museum in Stockholm.
Oh, that's
you
cool.
will not stop dancing, like even if you don't like it. ABBA, like it's a great time.
It's such good sort of never inappropriate to hear ABBA. I think. I remember correctly, my high school formal, which is going back a few years now, we rented a stretch Hummer to take us to the formal, and literally all they had in the back was ABBA DVDs. So we're just blasting because like the drive was about 15 minutes from my house to the thing, but we'd paid for like an hour or something. So they just sort of drove us around listening to ABBA and watching the concert DVDs in the back.
But isn't it the best thing about ABBA? It's like it doesn't even matter about the music almost. It's like the moments in your life where ABBA was played. It's always awesome when ABBA's playing. And some of their songs are just like so bizarre to me. Like Fernando, like about the Spanish Civil War, like this like power ballad from the 70s. Like when you think about it, that's so mental.
Yeah.
Like, good on them.
It's a bit like Boney M. You get these.
I love Boney M.
Yeah, it's great. You get this real solid historical content. And like, the story of Rasputin is so clear and easy to follow in that song, and it's a great song as well. It's like, what more could you want?
People are geniuses, creative geniuses.
Yeah, I want to see more nerds making like pop music like that. Okay, so your fourth tiny joy is gardening, and you've got a list of some crops that you're currently working on, which is cherry tomatoes, artichokes, passion fruit, and your peaches are just about to ripen. How long have you had a green thumb for?
I think like it's one of those things that like, I don't know, when I was a kid, my mom made me like a little garden, but I feel like you reach 30 and all of a sudden you realize you're going to die and you should grow something.
Right, okay. Is this to counteract the death, you start to make some life?
Yeah.
Interesting.
My theory on gardening, like I feel like I feel like my garden's been very successful. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I've tried things that have worked. I've tried things that haven't worked. But my theory is like, I work at community radio. Like money is like, I'm going to grow like the most expensive things. So I was like, I'm going to put in passion fruit. I'm going to put in artichokes. That they were really common where I grew up in the States.
Oh, of course.
But you don't really get them here. When you do, they're super expensive. I put in a fig tree because I was like, I love figs, and they're always like $8 for one fig. So I'm like, I'm only going to grow things that I can't afford to like just buy heaps of. So I grew heaps of strawberries. I've got raspberries that have done really well. And the other thing I'm cultivating, I haven't planted it yet, but I've established some asparagus beds, and I wanted to make sure that they were like really weed free before I invested in the asparagus crowns, because they last for like 20 years. They're fairly expensive to put in, but if like you get too many weeds in the asparagus bed, it can raise havoc. So I've established the beds, and the asparagus is going in next year.
Wow. So you buy these asparagus, this is an asparagus plant, the crown, and it just keeps growing.
Yeah, so
more asparagus is out of it.
Yeah, so you bury it. It looks kind of like long sort of tendrils, and you bury that. I've planted them with my dad before, and in the spring they put up like the spear, and that will become a fern if you let it go all the way to seed. So what you're doing is you're cutting it off before it turns into a fern. Yeah. It can put out several of those spears. And they last like 20 years. So once you invest in it, you're good to go.
Yeah, I attempted to grow an avocado from, you put the seed, you stab some toothpicks into it and put it above water, and then the root or whatever it is goes into the water. But mine kept cracking. The whole, I think you've just got to get lucky and hope that the shell kind of doesn't bust apart straight away. And mine have never made it past the phase where they have the little leaf out the top. And I think, if I had more time to garden, I'd try and grow an avocado tree because that's quite expensive. Yeah,
I think the other thing with gardening, like that people don't really talk about, is like, I mean, you can put a garden into a rental, but it's like, it's a bit of a waste of time. Like I had one rental where I put a veggie garden in, and there was like it was in Wellington, and there was a little landslide down the back. And they just came in and spread the landslide over my garden. And so I was like so dark. And
that's devastating.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's almost a class thing. Like I've been very fortunate to purchase my own house a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I can invest in my garden.
Yeah.
So I think I'm very privileged to be able to garden.
Oh, well, it's, life is hard, so enjoy the little things while you can.
Yeah.
Do you think you could ever do one of those off-the-grid sort of homesteads that you see on YouTube?
Love to.
You'd enjoy that?
I would love to. I think though, like you need to be doing it with someone really handy. Like I'm pretty handy, but I'll be honest, I'm a small person and I'm weak. Like you need someone.
You need like a behemoth of a
not a
person.
behemoth, but just maybe someone like another few centimeters taller,
Yeah.
few more muscles,
Yeah,
maybe.
and then you'd be sorted there. That's the gaps.
I'm
That's
the
kind of
brains.
you need some brawn to
yeah,
be
that's right.
to fill in the holes in your skill set. I guess.
That's
I guess you
right.
could say. Okay, so then number 5, I actually have a little interesting piece of trivia about this. So number 5, you've got sleeping and extended layabout sessions in bed, which is, I think it would be hard for someone to disagree with that. One thing I learned is the Japanese actually have a slang word for this because I don't know if I told you, but I lived in Japan for several years.
I did too.
Oh, which part were you in?
I lived in Kyoto.
That is the Honshu, right? That's the middle part. Yeah, so I was in Kyushu, which is the southern island, and I was
there?
in Fukuoka. Yeah.
Were you?
Yes, yeah.
Best ramen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's ruined ramen for me back
Oh,
here.
you can't. It's so sad. Even going to like places that people are like, oh, I love ramen here. And I'm just like,
And then they've just put sweet corn or something in it, and you're like, that's not Japanese.
nah. You like get to a stage where you're like, I am just being an asshole.
Yeah.
Like
Sometimes you just have to make do. Like there is a pretty good ramen ya, if you will, in the Sunday market. There's a little food truck. It's a long wait because they only do 2 at a time or something. But that's pretty good. Like that's worth.
I don't know if you've ever, do you know Ivan Ramen? He's a really famous restaurateur in Tokyo.
No, I
and
don't.
He put out a cookbook and it's like an entire cookbook. It's like, hundreds of pages long and it's just to make one bowl of ramen.
Wow.
And it takes days.
Yeah.
I have done it. And it
How
makes
was the end result?
It was great.
Yeah.
It made 10 bowls of ramen
Yeah.
and I had 10 friends over and it was great. And also, I don't know if you've seen the movie, what's the name of it? It means dandelion in Japanese. Tempopo.
Oh, no, I don't know if I have seen it. Is it a ramen movie?
It's about a ramen shop and it's kind of a piss take of like a spaghetti western. Like the guy comes into the town and there's like a ramen lady, but there's someone like kind of bullying her around. But it's like hilarious.
Yeah.
It's kind of postmodern. It's got these like weird segues in it. It's just, it would be one of my top movies of all time. Anyway, Ivan Ramen, he also like, I saw an interview with him and it was about like, in Japan, people are like, oh, why did you get into making ramen? He's like, the answer I always give anyone is that I watched the movie Tempopo.
Oh,
and I was like, you know what? That would be enough reason for me. So
absolutely.
those would be I'm glad you're a ramen fan.
Yeah, huge ramen fan.
All the varieties.
Yeah.
So many good ones.
Do you have because I was a Fukuoka guy, mine's the tonkatsu, the pork bone, I think it is. What is your kind of go-to?
Yeah, I would be the same.
Yeah.
And and because I went, because that's where you were. That's like it's really famous for ramen.
Yeah, I would say that's.
And it has the little street down by the wharf.
Oh yes, yatais. The little what is yatai for the listeners? They're like little food carts.
Yeah.
And
tiny.
and they bring them out every night and set them up, and they're essentially just cooking in the kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And tip for any foreigners out there: if you want to get some generally free food, go and sit at one of those and start talking to the drunk salarymen because they'll get real like sentimental. They'll be like one guy I remember bought us, it was like $3 or something. It wasn't heaps of money, but he was real sourced and he was like talking about how like this is a once in a lifetime meeting and we're never going to see each other again. So like your ramen's on me. And like he got real, like he was really getting sentimental about it. So try that out if you're planning on visiting Japan. But you had something you were going to say about you asked about Fukuoka, the ramen.
Yeah, that was because I think I traveled there and we specifically went to that street and like was blown away by that.
That's the mad thing is like you would enter these little hole in the wall places that don't have a sign except for that just says ramen outside or something, and it would be the best ramen you've ever had. And
incredible.
It's mad, eh? What was the joy? Oh, so the reason I brought up Japan was, did you ever hear someone use the phrase "goro goro shitemasu"?
No.
So a little bit like you would be familiar with the little onomatopoeia words like pika pika and waku waku and stuff. Those are like, for the listener, they're like feeling words almost. So like pika pika is what Pikachu's name come from, and it's sparkling, I think, is the onomatopoeia, and then waku waku is excitement. So goro goro is an interesting one because it actually means rolling, and it's in the sense of like a boulder or something like that. But when I got to Japan, I'd ask people what they're up to on Line. Did you ever use Line, the app, to message people? Yes, so that was the big messenger app. And I'd ask people what they're up to, and they would just say goro goro shitemasu, which just means like I'm rolling. And I was like, what does that mean? And for weeks, I just didn't know what people were on about. And then later on learned that is the slang word for just lazing about on bed because you're, I guess, just rolling around like a log or something. And so
I'm into that. Goro goro shitemasu.
Yeah,
that's me.
Big fan of goro goro. But yeah, I miss being able to tell people because, you know, when someone asks what you're up to and there's no simple way to say, I'm just kind of lazing about, bumming around, whatever it is. And yeah, so
and people know exactly what it is, and it's polite. It's not like a rude thing. It's like, I'm just like lying around.
Yeah, exactly. So I very much miss being able to use that. Do you have like a time limit that you could like lay about for? Do you feel like you need to get up and do something, or is it like you're pretty happy to just kind of?
I really like having a morning with the cat and just like not doing much.
Yeah.
I like a good nap. I like going to bed early.
Yeah.
I like getting up late. I love to sleep.
Is your cat like quite cuddly when you're
no.
going to bed?
No, yeah. He is, the official word is a turd.
Oh.
And he is like the worst sleeping buddy. He's like super nocturnal. Like his circadian rhythm has not changed since like cave cat times. And so he like wakes up at about like 7 p.m. and he comes in for some cuddles, and then like I turf him outside. Yeah. Like it's like feels so bad like for the environment and all that sort of stuff. He has a cat door, but he is just a night owl. Yeah. And like if he is locked inside, like he comes into the next to my head and just like kind of paws the pillow, like walks on my face. Like he's just the absolute worst. And then he comes in at like 7 a.m., has a little cuddle, and then puts himself to bed. And he does not move until 7 p.m. Like it is like, so during the day, he's really good. Like you can kind of even like spoon him for a little nap. Yeah. But anytime it's nighttime, like he's is just
on the clock.
Yeah. Oh, he's just the worst.
He's on those primordial hours. All right, so then number 7 is new hobbies, and it says you've dabbled in quite a few. So you've dabbled in pottery, sewing, crochet.
You've missed the one before that.
Oh, sorry, yes, I did. Number 6.
It links to it. My current hobby.
Okay, so sorry, my apologies to listen. Number 6 is physically creating things. So you do woodworking in the halls or men's shed, and you love power tools.
Yes.
Well, that ties nicely into you talking about renovating before.
Yeah.
I think you might be more handy than you think you are.
I'm very handy.
Yeah.
I actually did all the demo in my house myself.
With a sledgehammer?
Yes.
Nice.
And a reciprocating saw and a crowbar. Wow. And I took all the lath and plaster. My house is 100 years old, so I took all the lath and plaster off. I did need help. I mentioned earlier about being a weakling. So some very kind friends came and helped me, and my mom helped me to dump runs. But I did all the demo myself. I love just getting some wood and making things. I haven't made like tons and tons of things. The first thing I ever made was a planter box, and I was like so ambitious, and so because I was like, I've got this. Said my fig tree I mentioned earlier. I was like, I'm going to put it in a planter box so I can move it around because I hadn't really committed to where I was going to put it in my house, and I just like moved in. I made it so big we couldn't get it out of the men's shed door, so we had to like cut it in half. So like it's been an adventure, but actually the best thing I've ever learned to make was a chopping board because you have to learn so many skills to make a really nice one. You like biscuit join things. You have to learn about planing things and wood grain, and then how to finish something, how to sand something properly. So that was actually the best thing I've ever made. I made one for like a gift for a friend, and then a friend was ripping out their Rimu wardrobes, and they gave me all the wood. So then I had all this recycled Rimu. So I just started making chopping blocks, and I made different shaped ones for my sister's wedding. Like I made one that was a big one for kind of like in one shape, and then a small one, and they sort of fit together.
That's cool.
And then I've made them for birthdays, and then I took all of the offcuts and I made them into stacking blocks for my nephew. So that was
that's cool. Yeah,
that's been quite fun, and I feel like that's actually where I've learned the most. So even though the first thing I made was this like insane giant planter, where I've learned the most was on some of that smaller stuff, and then that's transferred in. Like I made a cupboard door for like my kitchen. I've made fixed lots of things. I took the gate. My gate broke. I took the whole gate off. I pulled it all apart, put new panels in where it needed it, rehung it.
Wow.
So yeah, I feel like I'm pretty handy. Built shelves. I don't know.
Have you ever done, or would you ever consider doing? This sounds like I'm about to ask you to like take on a contract from it. You know how people will do those van lives where they put all the carpentry and panels and stuff inside their van. Is that something you could ever see yourself taking on? You'd love that.
I would love to do that. I had a friend who had a van because she was like a tiler, and she sort of wrapped up her little tiling gig, and I just kept hinting at her. I was like, bring the van to Mencha. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always have these delusions of being like, you know, I'm a comedian. I want to travel. Like, I could do up a van, and then I look at all of the time lapses and I'm like, I don't have any of these skills.
No, same. I'm the same. I'm where my skill set is like I could put a mattress down the back and then like get a plug-in battery for my phone.
Because you have to do like electrician work. They're like, here's my alternator, and this is the thing that I charge off the solar.
Here's the grey water.
Yeah, and then this is what I use it, and it's like, oh no, it's too technical for me.
I have dreams of that, like having a little refit van, but apparently it's a big problem in New Zealand where like tourists come and they buy a van and they're not that expensive, like under $10,000, and they can't find a buyer at the end, so they abandon them. And I'm like, how do I get my hands on an abandoned van? Like even it's already half done, I will finish it for you. Like just give it to me, and I'll give you like. I'll take it off your hands. Like it'll be less work for you than drop. I'll drop you at the airport if you give me the van for free.
Do you know what I reckon you could do is you could go to hostels, because every time I stay at a hostel, there's always notice boards and people are trying to get rid of vans. So like wait until like the last day and then be like, I'll take that van off your hands.
Yeah. I feel like you have to be in Auckland. Everyone's flying out or something.
Nelson's
like that.
a good one. The YHA at Nelson, there was a lot of like vehicles that people wanted to sell. Like it was like a buying and selling vehicles thing. So the next time I go up for the Nelson Fringe Festival, get the plug-in. I think 14th and 15th of March, nelsonfringe.co.nz. Look for Panic at the Buffet, Taylor Ruddle. I'll take a photo of the notice board for you, and you can see if there's any vans for the taking.
Oh, I'd love that. I bloody love that.
Yeah.
So then, like, I jumped the gun a little bit. So new hobbies. So yeah, you've dabbled in pottery, sewing, crochet, and then other ones you're probably forgetting. So you're quite into the hands-on kind of creation stuff. Have you ever opened like an Etsy store or anything? Or would that take the kind of fun out of it to commercialize it?
I can't even sell something on Facebook Marketplace. That gives me like the times I've had to sell a fridge, like people are like, is it still available? Like that is my nightmare. That is like, you could not pay me.
Yeah.
Like, you could not pay me to do that for a job. Like, I literally have my old bathroom sink out the front of my house to put on Facebook Marketplace. It's been there for a month. And
you could do the old move of put a bike lock around it. And then I think that was something I learned in The Simpsons. Apparently, you just make it look like you want to keep something, and then it will go.
I live on a cul-de-sac.
Oh yeah, probably not a lot of people cruising for furniture.
I know, like, even the idea of just putting this up on Facebook Marketplace in front of my house and be like, free, take it. I'm like, it's too much.
I would make like a dead drop zone or something. I wouldn't want, like, that's the weird thing is people coming to your house is a little bit weird. I've considered waiting a few blocks down from, like a few houses down from mine and doing the handover just because, like, I don't know, I'm a little bit weird and paranoid like that.
No,
but
fair enough.
Yeah.
No, I don't mess with that. Like, I like creating things. I really like giving stuff away. Like, one of the things, like, I've put heaps of flowers and, I mentioned all that food. The joy for me is being able to give that stuff away.
True.
Like, that is the special part about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really selfish because I love to brag about it. Like,
you got to get the clout.
It's like,
what's the point of doing anything if people don't know about it?
These like cherry tomatoes that I grew for you. I grew these flowers. How nice are they?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like, but that is, I joke about it, but I feel like that is an element of making something, right? Like, I'm. This is like I'm getting into like life theories here, but
Uh-huh.
I find people who collect things like that freaks me out.
Really?
Like hoarding things,
Yeah.
having lots of something. So I have no interest, say, in like crocheting lots of cute little animals and keeping them for myself.
Uh-huh.
Like that doesn't interest me at all.
Yeah.
I love the idea of crocheting things and like giving them to people.
Yeah.
Or like if I crochet something like a whole bunch of like dish towels or a jacket that I wear, I'm not really a collector of things anymore. I think I feel responsibility for stuff in the wake of like the environmental crisis and stuff like that. And I think like this is like there's like power in making things for yourself. There's like it's really I feel like a radical thing to fix things. So I guess like that's where I come from in like hobbies. And I think there is like a human nature thing where creating something feels good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why I like to do that sort of stuff.
It's very Ron Swanson, if you've ever seen Parks and Rec.
Yes.
He's very into like even the actor, which is Nick Offerman, he's very into like make things with your own hands.
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, I always have this, I saw this on YouTube where it was you can take old plastic bags and you can kind of iron them together and you can make like wallets and stuff out of it.
I have crocheted with old plastic bags.
Really?
Yes. I've done the ironing thing. That was a while ago. That's like vintage plastic bags.
Yeah.
You know, I found one of
They're hard
those
to
in a
find
cupboard,
nowadays,
like an old
yeah.
bag and saved one. I was like, oh, I wonder if I could put this on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
Like, no, I never do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's so many cool things you can just make. And I don't know, sometimes they just turn out so crap and it's like, well, at least I had fun making it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's the process, what is it, the journey over destination in that case, right?
Yeah. And I think my job is pretty creative. Like
Very creative, yeah.
I do a lot of audio when you get into like editing real big multi-track projects with like lots of different sound effects. And yeah, that can be pretty creative.
Definitely, yeah. No, absolutely. All right, so then we sort of went through number 8, which was the shit posting. So we'll go through to number 9, which is cooking. So I was going to say, is that another string to your bow with creating stuff and growing food? So it is. What are your kind of like your best dishes? Would you say?
I knew you were going to ask this.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
I really like cooking kind of anything, really. I don't cook a lot of meat and I don't eat a lot of meat, not for any reason other than I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
But I do really love like South Asian cooking, like curries.
Yeah.
And I had a really great Sri Lankan friend. I learned a lot of cooking from him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like cooking vegetables. I was doing something recently and it was with a group of people and it was like an exercise, like a course. It was like you have to do something like your bucket list goal. And someone wrote on it like, I'd love to grow and cook a meal where I've grown everything. And I was like,
that's cool. Yeah.
I already do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's something I should be really proud of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a salad, but like I grew it all.
It's something magical about the fact that it's just stuff you put in the ground and then food appeared. Like what's I feel like sometimes we take things like that for granted. But like I heard years ago someone say, if we had never seen the sky before, the night sky before, and it just suddenly like blinked on, we would be like, what is that? Like that's incredible. So yeah, we do get very like, we get blasé to some amazing things that we see.
Well, it's also like, we've been divorced from the land for the most part. Like if you go to the supermarket, you get 2 tomatoes in a plastic bag and you go home and cut them up. Like, you know, you don't think about like the effort it went into just growing those, like even just watching it grow or like you worry about it like, oh, is it going to get enough water? Is it too windy? So like there's a lot of care and angst and it is amazing. Like you said, like it's actually an amazing process and you know, you kind of facilitate it really. You don't really do anything.
Yeah, you're just sort of caretaking a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah. And then you get to eat it. Like that's pretty cool.
It is, really. It is, yeah. Is there a dish that you like? Because I'm trying to think of, for me, I know I have dishes that I've tried several times and I can't quite get it right. Like I've tried risotto a few times and I just don't have the patience to do it like properly where you know, it's the course of about an hour, you're gradually adding the stuff in, and I've
Get a shoulder injury.
well, it's more like I just run out of patience and I go, that looks good, and then I'll just
It's a bit crunchy.
yeah, a little bit. But are there any dishes that you just can't get right no matter how many times you've tried?
I'm not really a dessert person. Like I don't really enjoy
Poached eggs is another one that
poached eggs. I just don't even bother.
Yeah,
I don't bother. That's
it's magic as far as I'm concerned.
one thing that I am like got really obsessed with for a while and then kind of stopped being obsessed with it, but was like a French style omelette where you have like, it's like no color on the outside, but the inside is just like molten-y, you know, and there's that like really famous chef in Kyoto who does the omurice.
Oh, I love those, yeah.
And there's lots of videos of him on YouTube. So it's that type of omelette. And I got the right pan and I'd like watch videos of like Jacques Pepin and I'd be like tapping the pan. Never quite got it 100%.
Yeah.
That would be one. I think there's something about like ethnic food. It doesn't matter like if you've got all the right ingredients, but if you're not in that place, like it never really.
There's like a je ne sais quoi that's not quite there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's probably an element of that.
Every time I try to make curry, I'm like, it's good, but it's not quite right. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
I love, like, I feel like this is like, people don't really think about it, but like Swedish and Northern European food is utterly delicious. So good. And I feel like I get like kind of, I think I'm like one of those like contrarian people, like when everyone was like, I don't like the word moist. Well, I'm like, well, you know, like that's just like stupid. And I kind of feel like food trends are the same. Like people are like,
so you go against the
as soon as people are like, it's like kind of snobbery stuff, it really just like yanks my chain. And I just feel like it's just yuck. Like people are like, oh, pineapple on a pizza. Well, do you know what? Pineapple on pizza is bloody delicious.
Yeah.
So get off your high horse.
Yeah, I feel like people ruin steak by being too like
into
elite.
it.
And you're like, who cares? Like it's yeah.
But yeah, so I love these like old fashioned dishes that you might get in New Zealand, or I remember from my childhood that are like not cool, or like, yeah, like I said, like Northern European food, like that people are like, I feel like a bit snobby about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of like that sort of stuff. Like I love a vintage cookbook. You know, like salads in New Zealand used to be an iceberg lettuce chopped up with a handful of grated tasty cheese and some like salad cream and a chopped boiled egg.
You put it in that thing that you press down on it and slice it. Yeah.
And you know what? I don't care who you are. That is delightful.
That feels Christmas to me. I feel like that's something my mother would always bring at Christmas time.
It's like, and then we're not, you know, it's like, oh, a salad has to be like all of these posh ingredients. And then, you know, like, yeah, I love all that stuff and fancy stuff, and going to a nice restaurant's nice and all of that other sort of stuff. But I feel like we've just got so snobby with everything.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like keeping up with food trends. It's just like simple, nice food is lovely. And I love ethnic food. Like I that's the best thing about traveling, is eating and meeting people who know things that are different to what you know about food and all that sort of stuff.
We were just talking about this in the other podcast that I recorded today, but are you familiar with the concept of a struggle meal?
Yes.
Do you have any go-to struggle meals that
I'll tell you what, the grimmest meal like I remember ever eating was like half a bag of almonds that I found someone had left out on the bench, and a glass of milk and a Guinness, and that was like dinner. You know, like that would be like a pretty grim.
That's definitely a struggle meal.
Where I was just like too lazy to do anything. Yeah. It's like if it isn't already on the bench or being able to be poured in a glass.
Yeah. Do you have any creations? Because Tom, who I interviewed, he told me about something called, I can't remember the name of it now, but I think it was like he's going to crucify me not remembering it. It's basically a bread roll that's been cut in half in a pie. They put a big pie in between. Do you have any kind of we were also talking about like a pot noodle sandwich, which is just
chip sandwich.
Do you have any creations like that you've come up with?
My dad used to make us like it was just like I feel like this is like stuff you have when you're a kid, like I don't know, a grated apple with milk on it, like a cereal.
Wow,
And
I've never heard of that before.
That was like one of those weird childhood things.
Yeah.
Because I think we were like out of cereal or I can't remember how it happened. Then we were like, everyone in the family was like, this is delicious. And so then it just became something we had. Or like my family are part Italian. We've always got some like frozen bit of pesto somewhere in the freezer. So like a pesto sandwich, which was just literally like toast with pesto, again, from some like half-used container in the freezer, and then some like iceberg lettuce.
Yeah, I'm sure I've done something like that before. I feel like your father might have just heard of the cereal Apple Jacks. He's like, well, I've got apples, so let's just get rid of the Jacks. Who needs the Jacks? Oh, that's fantastic. Apple and cereal. I think that's going to be a trend in this podcast, is asking people about struggle meals, because I love hearing about them. And
such good YouTube content too.
Yes, that's true.
Some of it's quite sad. I mean, my struggle meal is so different from, real struggle meals. Like, I don't know. I saw one where someone's like, oh yeah, get like ketchup packets and then boiling water, tomato soup.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my God, it makes me feel so grim. Like my posh pesto sandwich doesn't quite compete.
But I think though, people that had that would probably look back on it fondly. Like this, I don't know what it is. Something about, even though if you weren't doing well financially at the time, like something about struggle meals is just comforting. And I don't know. It's just a fun thing to ask people about. So then we have one more on your list, which is a good British BBC series. And it says you recently finished Ghosts and really loved it. So are you quite into the M.R. James BBC sort of horror specials?
No. Ghost is a very heartwarming half-hour sitcom.
Oh, okay, right. So slightly
different vibe.
Yeah, a little bit.
But tell me about these. I could put it on the watch list.
Yeah, so M.R. James is a horror writer, and his he sort of was the first one to pioneer the ghost story archetype of like stuffy. I think it's Oxford was the uni he went to. Stuffy Oxford professor gets on a train, goes to British seaside town, finds cursed artifact or something. Has a couple of normal days, then something weird happens, and then he ends by going, oh, what could that possibly have been? And he sort of questions about whether he believes in the supernatural or not. And so, like, that's the typical, they call it a Jamesian ghost story. Oh. And the BBC have done a few, which I can send you an email with some that I recommend you check out. And but yeah, M.R. James is the sort of the prototype, I guess, of that kind of ghost story. But the Ghosts, the one you just finished, tell me about that. It was just a funny, like, what does the name Ghost come from? Is it slang?
It's quite literal. Like, so it's like a young woman inherits a house, and there are all these ghosts populating it, and then she has a head injury, and all of a sudden can see and talk to them. So it's like, and they all are from like different eras. So there's someone who's been like a cave person.
I love it.
There's like an old Victorian lady. There's like a whole bunch of plague victims from a plague pit in the basement.
Yeah.
There's like a British, like closeted British general from World War II.
Right.
And it's just a really good cast of like, I thought it hit the same to me, like not exactly the same, like Office or Parks and Rec or 99, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But it had kind of that ensemble cast, like everyone's got a different personality, and the fun part is when they interact in different ways. It was great. It's wholesome, it's sweet, it was like thoughtful. Some of it was like really funny, some of it was a bit sad, but yeah.
So it's is it sort of cozy TV kind of?
Yeah,
vibe?
It's pretty cozy. I love a cozy murder. Like you were mentioning, I was like, yes, that sounds exactly what I like. I love a Charles Dickens adaptation.
The Signalman is very M.R. James. Yeah. And so, I can recommend another podcast. It's called Shadows at the Door, and they do predominantly Jamesian audio drama, but it's all ghost stories like that.
Yeah.
And very, very cozy stuff. I'll add that to the link to the list of stuff that I send you after this.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? We've basically come up on an hour and 5 minutes, so that's a pretty good amount of time for a podcast. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of add about the BBC dramas?
Not really. they're really good. I feel like everyone knows that, right?
Something about the BBC's production style feels very cozy to me.
Yeah.
And so I agree there. They're always quite, even like Doctor Who or something I quite like.
And anything by Russell T Davies.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Fantastic.
Like, honestly, even when it's, his other stuff, like Downton, can't really be bothered, but like, I'm trying to think of all the good stuff.
Was it Queer as Folk he did or something?
Love Queer as Folk. I love the American Queer as Folk as well.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Both of them. Yeah. Oh, just love it. What other good stuff? What was that one? I don't know if it was ITV. Sometimes I kind of forget what's ITV if I say the wrong one. But like Fresh Meat, that was a really awesome show.
I remember that one, yeah.
I really enjoyed Big Boys this year. That's another like nice comedy.
That's not one I've seen. No.
I think it's on the BBC.
Was there one? I don't know if it was BBC, but it was about like a werewolf and a ghost and stuff. What was that called? It was called something like
Strangers.
Yeah,
Strangers.
Being human.
Being
or something.
human.
Yeah, that's
yes.
right. Yeah.
Oh my God, the depressed ghost.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. They do good work there at the BBC.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's basically the podcast. So thank you for joining us. That was a lot of fun, actually. The listeners, make sure to check out Plains FM. What's kind of the easiest way? Like, obviously, they can tune into 96.9.
Yep. If they're in the Canterbury Waitaha area, Plains is really what it sounds like. It's really Canterbury Plains. Like, we don't get it all the way down to Oamaru or up to Kaikoura. But like the Canterbury Plains and Banks Peninsula, we do a live stream feed on the website, so you can listen anywhere in the world to what's happening. And most of our shows are also available as podcasts for download on Spotify and Apple. And on the Plains FM website is basically the best way to see what we're making at the moment. And it's got information if you are listening to this and think, hey, I would really like to have a go. Give us a call. There's information on the website. And yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. Yeah, I recommend if you're somebody that's a young person, or you don't have to be a young person, but you can get involved. Like if you wanted to try radio, they let me just kind of have a punt, as I said. So it's definitely worth getting in touch and just seeing if there's anything you can do with them.
Yeah. I have to mention, like, if I don't know, you can cut this out if you want, but like there is a small fee involved for working with us because we are only partially funded by New Zealand On Air, but it is very small. If you're under 25, it doesn't apply. But yeah, otherwise, come on down.
Yeah. That's basically the main reason I don't have a show that's kind of live on the air, is because I'm still looking to find a sponsor. So if you want to sponsor Ruddle Me This, so we can do it live at some point, then you know how to reach me, get in touch. But it's been cool just doing bits and pieces. Like just sort of come into the studio. We did the pirate book, and I think you were going to get me to do some kind of ads or something. Are we going to do that tonight?
Look, here are the scripts right here in front of you.
Hell yeah. Okay. So let's wrap that up. We'll get those done, and then you can get started on your weekend. So thank you so much, Pia, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It was a really fun conversation. And with all the renos that are happening, it was great to write this list and remind myself of my little joys.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to Ruddle Me This. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave me a review on your favourite podcast platform. You can find me on social media at Taylor Ruddle Comedy on all the major platforms. You can also join patreon.com/Taylor Ruddle Comedy for free, which gets you access to all sorts of extras and behind-the-scenes content, as well as allows you to communicate directly with me and let me know what you think of the show. Tune in again next Monday for another episode of Ruddle Me This, and until then, Ruddle her out.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.